From intense clashes to shocking displays of dissent, protests have long been a powerful catalyst for change. Today, we delve into the heart of the United Kingdom's most unsettling protest moments caught on camera. From iconic rallies to unexpected confrontations, join us as we uncover the 35 most disturbing UK protest moments that shook the nation. During a UK protest, a man wearing a yellow vest stepped forward and positioned himself in front of a water cannon. However, the situation quickly escalated when police officers, armed with batons, approached him. The man stood firm as the officers approached. With swift strikes, they brought him down, his resistance quickly subdued. The officers quickly grabbed the man and pulled him away, allowing the water cannon to continue moving forward. On August 4, 2024, Bristol became the stage for a tense and unexpected confrontation during a protest in the UK. As demonstrators gathered, a pro-British protester spotted a black man standing nearby. The atmosphere shifted from peaceful demonstration to something far more charged. But before the situation could spiral further out of control, an Asian bystander, witnessing the assault, jumped in to defend the man under attack. The confrontation was short-lived as police quickly stepped in, separating the individuals and restoring a semblance of order. During the UK protests in August 2024, a Tory aide experienced a chilling and chaotic encounter.
Shame on you! 10 years of underfunding this system!
As the aide moved through the tumultuous scene, a group of more than 5 protesters fixated on him. Their intense focus and determined approach cut through the surrounding chaos.
In this country, you are not welcome in this brown hospital! You are not welcome in this hospital! You are not welcome in this country!
The group closed in on the ID, surrounding him with aggressive intent. Fortunately, the ID was protected until he was able to drive away from the scene. While protesting, a scene unfolds like a tense game of tug-of-war.
Get out of the way! Get out of the way! I don't care. You need to be arrested. Public.
One defiant soul is dragged away by officers, only to slip back to his original spot the moment their backs are turned. The officers then grab a second protester, but before they can even take a breath, the first one is right back where he started, standing firm. One can almost sense the mounting frustration as this game of resistance plays out, a back-and-forth struggle where the protesters refuse to be silenced. In August 2024, Liverpool, England, became the center of significant unrest, spreading across the United Kingdom. What started as peaceful protests quickly turned into chaos, with rioters targeting businesses and commercial areas, leading to widespread looting. The situation worsened as fires broke out across the city, set by arsonists exploiting the turmoil. These fires pushed local fire services to their limits as they struggled to control the flames threatening both property and lives. In Sunderland, UK, anti-immigration riots erupted with fury.
There's thousands here as well.
The violence escalated rapidly as demonstrators set the town's police station and vehicles ablaze. The protest caused a widespread disorder. In another footage, a group of demonstrators targeted a store, attempting to break into it. The scene unfolded with increasing intensity as protesters hurled different objects. The protesters' efforts aimed at shattering the barrier to gain entry. Despite their relentless attempts, the door held firm, though the relentless assault made it evident that the protesters were determined to breach the store. Across the UK, protests over immigration policies erupted into violence. What began as demonstrations quickly turned dangerous as protesters clashed with police. The situation intensified with the protesters setting fires and attempting to break into buildings. They threw bricks and bottles at windows, trying to force their way inside. The chaotic scenes unfolded with escalating aggression as fires spread and the damage to property mounted. Law enforcement struggled to control the unrest, with the protests disrupting communities and escalating tensions throughout the country. The events highlighted a growing discontent and the severe impact of the protests on public safety and order.
There's thousands here as well. I'll stand here. Go down there.
In Sunderland, as dawn broke, the streets stirred with an unusual energy.
Save the children. There's a few thousand. There's a few thousand.
In quiet neighborhoods, young adults and middle-aged residents joined the growing tide. Even the elderly, with determination in their eyes, took to the streets.
There's thousands here as well. I'll stand here. Go down there.
From all corners they came, converging. A sea of faces, young and old, united in purpose. Then as one, they surged forward. In August 2024, a violent clash erupted during protests in the UK. An anti-protester was targeted by a hostile crowd, leading to a severe beating. The confrontation started with verbal exchanges and quickly escalated into physical violence. The anti-protester was attacked by multiple individuals, receiving repeated blows. The beating continued as he fell to the ground, with the crowd kicking and punching him. Police arrived shortly after and intervened, removing the attackers and providing aid to the injured man. The streets of London erupted into chaos as an anti-Israel protest turned violent. As darkness fell, fireworks were launched into the air, used as makeshift weapons rather than for celebration.
I cannot believe you guys are taking this.
The scene was chaotic, with explosions lighting up the night sky and creating a dangerous atmosphere. Police officers, caught in the midst of the turmoil, had to duck and weave to avoid the blasts. The protest, which had started as a demonstration, quickly escalated into a violent confrontation, leaving the area in disarray and the authorities struggling to maintain control. Tension escalated across the UK as cities faced significant unrest. The catalyst was a tragic event in Southport, where 3 children tragically lost their lives. The incident, involving an individual with an immigrant background, sparked strong emotions and led to protests across the nation. Concerned citizens and immigrant communities gathered, each with their perspectives, leading to heightened tensions. Riot police were deployed, working tirelessly to keep the peace and ensure the safety of all involved. Despite their efforts, maintaining order proved challenging, as emotions ran high and the situation remained delicate. On August 3, 2024, Manchester saw big protests. Two groups with different views came to the city centre. One group wanted changes. They were angry about some things happening in the country. The other group didn't agree with these ideas. They came to show they thought differently. Both groups were loud and wanted people to hear them. The police tried to keep them apart to avoid any fighting. On a day meant for peaceful demonstration, chaos erupted in the city center. As thousands marched for change, a shadowy element emerged from the crowd. These individuals, masquerading as protesters, had a different agenda entirely. While chants filled the air, they slipped away from the main group and targeted local shops. Electronics, clothes, cosmetics, and cash registers. Nothing was safe from their grasp. Some protesters tried to intervene, horrified by the destruction. But in the confusion, the looters melted away, leaving bewildered shop owners to survey the damage. In Stoke, a city known for its pottery and industrial roots, the streets filled with protesters on a crisp morning. Thousands gathered in the city center, their faces showing a mix of determination and frustration. People of all ages joined in, uniting in a single, powerful voice. A wave of discontent, long building up, had finally reached a breaking point. Amid the chaos of the UK protests, an unexpected and brutal confrontation erupted between two opposing groups. The protest, initially marked by its intense but relatively controlled atmosphere, took a dark turn when a group of counter-protesters, fueled by anger and resentment, launched an attack on the demonstrators. The clash was triggered over a seemingly trivial item, a souvenir that one of the protesters was carrying.
Stop!
The object, initially intended as a symbol of the protest, quickly became a flashpoint for violence. In the heart of Sunderland, England, civil unrest ignited as the streets descended into chaos. Protesters, their faces masked by fury, took to the streets, setting the central police station ablaze. The flames, fed by the collective rage, lit up the night, casting an eerie glow over the city.
Get your picture on the sun!
As the fire raged, clashes erupted between the protesters and law enforcement. In the heart of Bristol, tension hung thick in the air as two opposing forces converged.
And a much larger anti-fascist counter-protest.
On one side, a group of protesters stood firm, their voices raised in defiance. On the other, a much larger anti-fascist counter-protest swelled, their numbers growing with each passing minute.
Confrontational and tense, as in so many places in the last few days. The police, right in the middle of the district.
The scene quickly turned volatile. Police officers, desperate to maintain order, positioned themselves between the two groups, their presence the only thing preventing an all-out clash. But the situation was anything but stable.
In Hull city centre, another standoff between a large group of protesters and police. Some were filmed taking a piece of scaffolding, apparently to use as a missile.
What began as a standoff soon escalated into chaos. Shouts turned to scuffles, and the police line wavered as they struggled to keep the groups apart. In the heart of the city, what started as a peaceful protest quickly turned violent. Shops and cars were set on fire, with flames lighting up the streets. Windows broke from thrown bricks, and the air was thick with smoke and tear gas. The police struggled to control the chaos as the streets descended into disorder.
Kill him!
Some protesters even turned on each other, dragging the injured away from the fighting. What began as a peaceful call for change ended in a night of destruction that would leave lasting scars. In an unprecedented wave of unrest, British schoolchildren have taken to the streets, joining the mass protests sweeping across the UK. For many of these children, this is their first experience of activism, driven by a sense of urgency and a desire to be heard. Their reasons for joining the protests are varied. Some are there to stand up for their communities, others are motivated by the desire to fight for a future they believe is under threat. Rather than promoting peace, some protesters were heard chanting slogans that incite violence. Their messages, resonating through the streets, reveal that these gatherings are more about expressing extreme views than advocating for constructive dialogue. As the situation evolves, it's becoming clearer that these protests are not just about peaceful expression, but are often fueled by intense and divisive rhetoric. Protests in Liverpool and cities across the UK have erupted, drawing thousands of angry and frustrated citizens into the streets. The focus of their anger is clear. Many are calling for the resignation of Keir Starmer, the leader of the Labour Party. The protests have seen citizens from all walks of life, united by a common demand for change, taking to the streets in a powerful display of public dissent. As the demonstrations continue to gain momentum, the calls for Starmer's resignation grow louder, signaling a critical moment in the UK's political landscape. During the height of the protests, tensions reached a boiling point as demonstrators began hurling all sorts of objects at police vehicles. Bottles, rocks, and anything they could find were launched toward the advancing police line. The relentless barrage echoed through the streets as protesters vented their anger and frustration. The police vehicles, once symbols of authority, became the target of the crowd's fury. As the situation escalated, the line between protest and riot blurred, marking a turning point in the day's events. Chaos erupted in the UK during what began as a peaceful protest. Demonstrators gathered to voice their concerns, but tensions quickly escalated when counter-protesters arrived on the scene. Despite the presence of police officers, the situation spiraled out of control as the counter-protesters launched a violent attack on the original group. The police, caught between the two opposing sides, struggled to maintain order. Officers worked tirelessly to separate the clashing groups, but the intensity of the confrontation made it difficult to control the chaos. The scene turned into a volatile battleground, with law enforcement doing everything in their power to restore peace amid the turmoil. On July 30th, 2024, the seaside town of Southend became a flashpoint for tension. A group labeled as far-right by authorities gathered in the town center, their anger palpable in the cool evening air. As night came, the crowd grew larger. Chants grew louder and more intense, bouncing off the shops. The police, who had been standing back, moved in closer. The police line, which had been holding firm, began to break. A chaotic fight erupted as batons clashed with fists. A protest in the UK took a violent turn as tensions between demonstrators and law enforcement erupted into chaos. As the police formed lines to restrict access to certain areas, the frustration among the protesters reached a boiling point. Shouts and jeers filled the air as the crowd pushed against the barriers. Some protesters, emboldened by the chaos, began chasing after the officers, who were forced to retreat in an effort to regroup and avoid being overwhelmed. The streets became a battleground, with police and protesters locked in a tense and violent struggle. In Sunderland, a city known more for its quiet resilience than for scenes of unrest, the streets have erupted in a way that few could have imagined.
It's all action now. We have 2 police drones.
British citizens, fueled by anger and frustration, have taken to the streets in numbers that are both unprecedented and unnerving. As the protesters advanced, their chants echoing through the streets, the atmosphere grew increasingly tense. The police, clad in riot gear, formed a formidable barrier, their shields up and batons at the ready. What began as a standoff quickly escalated as the crowd surged forward, unwilling to back down. In the UK, the protests escalated into scenes of fiery chaos as anger spilled over into violence. What began as a demonstration quickly spiraled out of control, transforming the town into a landscape of destruction. As tensions mounted, protesters began setting fire to tires and cars, creating towering infernos that lit up the night sky. The sight of burning vehicles became a powerful symbol of the unrest. The protests across the UK have taken a dark turn as far-right extremists unleash a wave of violent destruction and barbarity. Fueled by anger and intolerance, these groups have turned their rage against police and public property, leaving a trail of chaos in their wake. In a shocking display of brutality, the protesters have targeted police vehicles with relentless ferocity. The scenes of destruction are both dramatic and alarming. Police cars, symbols of authority and order, are systematically vandalized and set ablaze. This wave of far-right extremism has transformed the protests into a battleground of anger and aggression. The once defiant lines of peaceful demonstration have blurred into a chaotic struggle, where the principles of protest are overshadowed by raw, destructive fury. Amidst the escalating tensions of the right-wing protests against what they call an invasion, a new, powerful response has emerged on the streets. The scene has turned into a high-stakes confrontation, with the Muslim groups rallying in opposition to the right-wing rhetoric, intensifying the divide that has gripped the nation. These gatherings reflect the profound impact of the protests, drawing lines that pit communities against each other in a charged atmosphere of fear and defiance. In a chilling moment of escalating unrest, a group of protesters turned their fury on a moving car, blocking its passage and attacking it with relentless force. The vehicle, caught in the wrong place at the wrong time, became the target of the crowd's growing anger. As the car tried to navigate through the crowd, protesters quickly surrounded it, cutting off any escape. Shouts filled the air as fists pounded on the car's windows, and the situation rapidly spiraled out of control. With nowhere to go, the car became the focal point of the protesters' rage. They pounded on the hood and roof, leaving deep dents, while others ripped at the side mirrors and anything else they could reach. On August 3, 2024, Manchester's streets echoed with the sound of protest. Thousands gathered in the city centre, their voices rising in a unified call for change. The day began peacefully. Families marched alongside students and workers, their signs bobbing above the crowd. In a truly bizarre and hilarious twist to the UK protests, a group of adults took to the streets in a unique and eye-catching manner. Dressed as zombies, they wandered through the crowd, their eerie costumes making them stand out among the sea of protesters. Each zombie carried a placard attached to their chest, with various messages written in bold, colorful letters. The contrast between their grotesque appearances and the serious nature of their messages created a surreal and comical scene. During a recent protest in the UK, supporters of the Islamic Republic violently attacked several Iranians who were celebrating in front of a mourning ceremony for President Ibrahim Raisi. The peaceful demonstration quickly turned chaotic as regime supporters launched aggressive assaults on those rejoicing. The confrontation became a grim spectacle, highlighting the intense tensions and divisions surrounding the event.